Hello, and welcome to Introducing Me. I'm your host, Sarah. I started this podcast to get to know other people and lifestyles while discovering more about myself. Each episode, I give a new guest a chance to discuss their background, culture, interests, or whatever they want to talk about to help increase all of our own worldviews. Following up from last episode, we're taking a look back at some previous episodes. You'll hear clips that were recorded in my second year of podcasting, specifically between October 19th, 2021 and July 11th, 2022. In the next episode, we will be looking back at episodes from year 3 as I close out my 4th year of podcasting. It's important to realize that these episodes weren't recorded within the last few weeks like my regular episodes. Things these guests stated at the time may not be a fully accurate representation of how they are today, but I wanted to pull different stories and life experiences for today's episode. There are clips of varying lengths from 5 different episodes, and I hope that if you haven't heard these episodes, you give the archives a chance to hear their entire stories, or if you have heard them before, give them another listen, and you might find joy in recalling back to when you first listened to that episode. This first clip is from my conversation with Michael Long. He is an advocate, inspirational speaker, and the author of A Life Like Anybody Else: How a Man with an Intellectual Disability Fulfilled His American Dream. And what do you think the best things to tell children are in terms of accepting people with intellectual disabilities and making sure that, yes, they are a part of society?
Well, I think that the most important message that I try to be able to get out there for the children is being able to know that they're just like them, and it is important to be able to be a part of inclusion opportunities, because it is a most powerful thing that when an individual with an intellectual disability to be able to have their dreams come true. And I think one of the messages that I got across is that couple of things. One is when you grow up and get married, you could have a child with an intellectual disability. And so it's important to be able to make sure that when they're children and they interact with people with developmental disability, that prepares them as being parents in a situation in the new future of if they have intellectual disabilities. One of the things that I did in my speeches, especially at junior high, because that's where you really start associating with other people and making friends and being able to interact with your friends and everything. And so I think there's a barrier in the situation, especially with PE in the situation, and that is where you have 2 captains in the situation, and they pick the people, in the situation of who they want on their team if they were playing basketball or football or baseball or whatever the case might be. And so it was really important that where I said that you need to be able to not have captains and choose people, because people with intellectual disabilities that are included always get chose last in the situation. And so how you prevent that from happening is you just go down 1, 2, 1, 2, all the ones in the situation, you're one team, all the twos in another team, and you have an inclusive opportunity to make a difference in people's lives and being able to play sports. And I'm a big sports fan, as you probably could tell. I'm a big San Francisco Giants, 107 wins this year out of 162 games. And they cremated the Dodgers, the rivalry, last night in the first game that they ever played with each other in the playoffs. And so I was so ecstatic that we won 4-0 last night. And so it's really important to be able to have inclusive opportunities at that age.
Yeah, and I think that example you gave just in PE class is so useful and easy to do, and would affect a lot of people who aren't getting picked first when it comes to team sports. Now, in your book, it does mention that I believe your parents were originally told you may never speak, which is obviously not what happened.
Right.
So
that's true.
Would you be willing to talk a little bit about your disability and what sort of things you do struggle with? Because you do speak, and that has been happening.
Yeah. Well, one of the things is I think the doctor didn't know what he was talking about and what kind of commitment that my parents had, being able to make sure that my parents made sure that I have the opportunity to speak. I remember that I hated it. There was a time where I went to a little town called Chico, California, and it was rated back in 1989 the number one party school in America, and that is Chico State. And so one of the things that happened is I didn't like the situation, and so my parents decided not to be able to spend the money of sending me to a speech therapist when I was little in the situation. And so one of the things that happened is it created a lot of barriers between me and my classmates without intellectual disabilities. And that is where I left. There was a speech therapist in the situation at the school. And so I left the room in the situation, and that created barriers of why is Michael going out of the classroom. And so I had a lot of speech therapists, speech therapy. And then from first grade on to, I think it was about 6th grade or 7th grade, that where I went to my first great teacher, Mrs. Bettman. And I went to her house during the summer to be able to, for about 2 hours, to be able to make sure that I kept up during the summer years and being able to learn how to read and talk and all of that kind of stuff. So as you can see, I had very strong parents in the situation of wanting me to be able to learn how to talk and learn how to be able to walk and so I I always loved Mrs. Bettman, and so it was something that I always enjoyed during the summer years, or summertime during the years of summer. So yeah, that's how that happened.
Next up is a quick clip from Vera's episode. She is an ASL English interpreter from Ontario, Canada, and also a CODA, which is an acronym that means Child of Deaf Adult. ASL is her first language, and she has spent her whole life working and volunteering and just being a part of the deaf community. What is the day-to-day responsibility of being an interpreter?
It depends on the day because I have two interpreting hats that I wear. I have a contract where I'm an interpreter for individuals that are newcomers to Canada at a program where they're learning written English and ASL with the goal of becoming Canadian citizens. So they can book me for whatever they need me for during the 15 hours a week that I'm contracted to be there. And by be there nowadays, it's mostly virtual, but I'm available to them for whatever they need, whether it's a dentist appointment, doctor's appointment, job interview, citizenship test, everything. And then I also work as a freelance sign language interpreter. And so that is where people can contact me directly for whatever their interpreting needs are. And I go to different assignments daily. So I have 2 funerals this week. I had a wedding earlier this month, lots of doctor's appointments. I did Fan Expo, Toronto earlier this month. So anywhere that you or I would go, deaf people also go, but they need access, and that's where I come in.
And is it difficult specifically with like doctor's appointments and like medical jargon and to kind of expand that knowledge? Because I feel like I forget terms in like spoken language to then also be like, you weren't learning, I would guess, those things when you were first learning ASL as your first language.
No. And it's also a big reason that I'm an advocate of why CODAs shouldn't be used as interpreters, especially when they're children, because we don't have the terminology, the worldliness. We don't have the vocabulary. We don't have the confidentiality agreement. We're not non-partial as CODAs. And so they shouldn't be used as interpreters. You should use qualified interpreters as much as possible because of confidentiality, because we study in order to be able to interrupt the doctor and say, I'm sorry, for the interpreter, I don't quite understand what that is. Would you mind explaining it to me so that I could better explain it to the deaf person? Or ask for preparation materials ahead of time so that we can read up on certain things and become well informed. Interpreters are like jack of all trades, master of none. Like we know a little bit about every single thing that we have to do. And I'm thankful and very privileged to be able to do that because I do learn a lot personally that I can retain for future appointments or even future benefit.
As I am preparing this episode and on its release date, the Paralympic Games are currently being held in Paris, where Jessica Hyams is competing. When Jessica was born, she was diagnosed with amniotic band syndrome. About a year after her birth, her parents decided that the best course of action was to have her leg amputated right around the ankle-calf region. She goes into more detail in the episode, but this clip covers her experience with the Paralympic Games. Now, you mentioned that you got into the Paralympics when I believe you were in high school. So how did that come about, and what was that story to kind of be like, this is something I'm now interested in, I'm going to go for it?
Yeah, so my mom was I believe she was on Facebook one day, just scrolling through things, and she found a page for this adaptive meet down in Oklahoma City. And she read up on it and heard that it was learned about that it was for adaptive athletes of all ages, but is geared towards youth and adaptive children. And we had no idea this world was even a thing. I never heard of it, but we decided that is going to be our summer vacation for the time. So we made a plan, and we sat down as a family, and my parents said, we're going to try this. We have no idea if we're going to hate it or not. If we try it for one day and decide this isn't our thing, we'll find something else to do in Oklahoma City. But if we end up loving it, we'll enjoy the whole week. And we got down there and absolutely fell in love with the environment right away. For me, it was really impactful to be in an environment where the whole community understands. Because before, I know all my sports experience was with children who didn't have any sort of physical disability. And so I was just used to knowing that, okay, I'll probably be slower than them in this. I probably won't be able to do this, or have to adapt it in a way that no one else really understands why or how I'm doing it. But once I got there, that wasn't even a problem. Everyone expected, you go into a building, okay, where's the elevator? Where's the ramp? Because we have people that want to do this and need this. And so we just casually do that. And, everyone has their prosthetics laying around on the ground, and it's not a problem. We're comparing legs and everything and stories. And it was just a really unique environment that I had no idea even existed. My family didn't either. And we love that community of understanding and being able to compete alongside athletes that had so many different disabilities, ones I had never even heard of at the time, that really grew my love for the sport. And it impacted me so positively that once we came back home, we're like, we have to make this a regular thing. I need to be more be at these meets more, even if it's not to compete, just to be in that environment. So yeah, that absolutely, I fell in love with it. And it was there that I was told about the Paralympics and how this isn't like, you don't just have to do this as a casual event. You can also do this professionally and, as an elite athlete.
So then what was it like trying out and being accepted to go to Rio?
It was very crazy. I went into it not really knowing if I would make it and sort of expecting that I wouldn't. At the time that I tried out, I was 16 or 17 years old. So I was very young and I had only been competing against adult and elite athletes for about 2 years at that point. So I thankfully knew some of the other athletes that were there, and they could sort of coach me through, like, okay, this will be sort of a scary experience, but here's, what you're going to see and what you're going to, have to do. And I remember trying out for the 400, and I tried for the 400 and the discus. And when I went to line up with the 400, I looked to my right, and there was the world record holder of the 400 meters. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, she is really famous. She paved the ways for all of us. This is absolutely insane. What am I doing here? And that was bizarre for me. But in the same sense, I felt very comfortable, and it felt very natural for me to be in that environment. I was like, I kind of feel like I don't belong only because I'm young and I haven't done this before, but it felt very right to be there. And I mean, once I found out that I made it, I bawled the entire time. My family and I were together when we found out, and we were just hugging and crying, and we had to pinch ourselves and say, okay, this is actually happening. This is actually a thing. This isn't just a dream anymore. It's a reality. And that was really cool to experience.
And then what was Rio like?
It was insane. So just to give a brief history of the Paralympics, Rio was a very sort of divisive games, in the sense that the Olympics usually occur about 2 to 3 weeks ahead of the Paralympics. And at the time, we had just found out that the Olympic community hosting at Rio had used up all the Paralympic fund money for the Olympics, and we had no money left for the Paralympics. So the few weeks leading up to that was very scary for the athletes, not knowing if the games would even happen at all, which of course we had the same feelings 4 years later. But it was, I know for a lot of the other athletes that were older and really understood the economics and political side of all that, it was really scary not knowing when they would happen, if at all. And thankfully, once we got there and we knew, okay, they found the money, they found the funds, and we are going to make this something worthwhile. We are going to show, everyone who decided to take away all the Paralympic funding and Paralympic ability that, we're here, we mean business. And it was absolutely phenomenal. I was there for 2 weeks down in Brazil, and the whole thing was basically a fever dream, like for me. So all the athletes stay in one village complex, basically, which is about like 20 high-rise buildings of apartments, and they have like entertainment centers, this giant like food court area, and tons of outdoor recreation. And so you're put there with the best athletes in the world. And it was amazing to walk around and see everyone from all different countries representing their area of the world. This one year in the village, you wear only whatever team's clothing you represent. So we had all of our Team USA gear, which I was stoked to have. I was giddy like a school child wearing it the whole time. But like my favorite part was just seeing everyone in all of their clothing and seeing like, oh my gosh, they're from this area of the world. They're from a country I didn't even know existed. Like, this is insane. And then once I went to the Olympic Stadium, which is the track and field facilities, that was a real sort of arm-pinching moment for me. I was able to walk in on a day that they had no competitions, and we sort of snuck in to view the area and see, okay, what's the competition venue look like? What can we expect when we walk in? And it was just this huge, gorgeous blue track. And I mean, that at the time, that was the largest venue I had ever stepped foot in. And seeing that was so amazing. I mean, I had seen pictures of it ahead of time, but just the sheer mass of that was so incredible. And yeah, once I saw that, I was like, okay, I want competition day to be here because I want to see this. This feels so amazing to be here.
So then what was competition day like, being up against people from various different regions of the world?
It was absolutely crazy. I personally think that my discus was sort of the craziest. That one, I was the youngest by, I believe, at least 10 years. Because throwers typically have a longer lifespan for their career in sports. And I got into it quite young. And so being there, I was like, oh my gosh, these people have like so many Paralympics under their belt. They've been to so many games before. They have years of doing this. This is like my first time being at a games, and I don't know what to expect. And that was just nuts for me. And thankfully, I was able to make finals in the discus, which was super cool. I barely snuck in there, and I finished 8th, and I had a huge PR. And I credit all that to having just a huge adrenaline rush of being there. Thankfully, my parents and my sisters and one set of my grandparents were able to actually fly to Rio to support me. So they were in the stands there with me, and it was really amazing to look back after every throw and see them cheering me on and waving their flags. That really brought me, back to reality every time I sort of got freaked out about being in the stadium. And it really humbled me just seeing them because, the family, they were the people who got me to where I was. and they supported me through every part of my journey to Rio. So seeing them there, I was like, oh my gosh, you know, we made it. It was no longer like an I made it thing. I was like, oh, we made it. We did this and we are finally in the stadium. And it was an amazing experience.
This next episode is with Marsha McCurdy Adele. As of today, she recently retired as the Deputy Fire Marshal of West Hartford, Connecticut, and she was the first Black woman to graduate from the Connecticut Fire Academy. So then what has it been like being one of the only Black women in a male-dominated field?
It's a unique situation, obviously, and it's not easy. It is not easy. In the beginning, so to give it a little bit more context, there are people who, when I got on the job in 2000, there were men there from the 70s. So from before I was born. Okay. So there were a number of people, a number of these guys that I was working alongside, we were risking our lives for each other. I mean, that really is a fact. And they didn't want me there. They said some of the unthinkables, and I still had to show up to work, knowing that this is the way they thought about me. But I realized that they may articulate something like, well, the only reason why you're here is because you checked 2 boxes. And I say, I took the same test that you did. You're took the same test. So I'm here on merit. And that's number one. And number two, regardless as to whether or not I've got the experience you're going to want to work with me because I'm going to be the best firefighter that I can be. And I tried my best every day to convince them of that. And that is a very heavy burden. So instead, what I did was I did my best job for myself and for my community and for my brothers and sisters on the job, not to try and convince someone that they should like me or that I've earned my place there. The town of West Hartford decided that I earned my place there. I didn't have to convince anybody else. So, that part was pretty tough at first. But then there are other people who were just like, can you do the job? It's pretty prohibitive for women, or people think that it's prohibitive for women because of the strength factor. And once they realized that I wasn't telling them to do my job and that I had a sincere curiosity about how to do my job better, and I was holding my own in terms of literally holding my own stuff, because everything is heavy in the fire department. They're like, she's not all that bad. And then, and that's where camaraderie really begins. And so it really wasn't like what you see on TV in the beginning. I can assure you of that. But that's where it can end up. Certainly can.
Did you ever have any moments where you were like, I just can't do this, or I just want to throw the towel in?
I think those moments, as few as they are, came more around loss than my relationships with the guys on the job. Because it's really hard to lose children, or when you see huge devastation. We were at a fire where 14 people died. Can you take the emotional toll that this plays? A couple of Advil and a good night's sleep and I can recover, at least back then. But really the emotional toll gets really hard when you see loss after loss. There was a time when my grandmother was really sick and I was stationed in a part of town that had a lot of elderly housing. It had a lot of nursing homes and assisted living facilities. And every time we went to a call, I saw my grandmother's face in every one of them, and they're dying. And it was like so hard. But at the end of the day, you go back to the firehouse after that call, and you're with the guys that are your family, that become your family, and that's what makes it easier. So when you come out of the call, you're thinking, oh man, this is so hard. I can't take another one of those calls. But you end up saying, all right, what's next? Bring it. I got this. So.
And what was your firehouse like? Was it all men?
Rare was the occasion where I was ever stationed. So again, context. I am in a department that is all career, and we have 5 firehouses. The women, the 5 of us, were all stationed at different firehouses. So I guess we couldn't gang up on any of the guys, right? So there wasn't really, unless it was a matter of, swapping a shift or working in overtime where I'm in a different firehouse, that I ever saw other women generally. And the occasions where that happened were, number one, that was very few and far between. And as was being stationed in the same firehouse. So every day, like, you were assigned a firehouse where you keep all of your belongings, and then you get an overtime shift. So you have to go to a different firehouse. And so rare was the occasion where I was stationed for very long with another woman in the same firehouse, much less at the same, and never at the same time. I was never partnered with another woman.
Lastly, Edward Underhill is a queer trans man who is a music composer and author. Since this episode released, he has published 2 young adult novels with more on the way. So would you be willing to share what your personal experience was like as a teenager and being trans?
Sure. So my personal experience being a teenager and being trans was that, like, I didn't know I was trans when I was a teenager. So I came out way back in the dark ages of 2009, which is like both a long time ago and not that long ago. Like, really not that long ago, but at the same time, just knowledge of trans stuff has come so far since then. So I came out when I was in college, and like, I remember looking, like, literally Googling, like looking online, trying to find like a blog or something to sort of see other people who were like me, to kind of like tell myself that I was going to be okay, right? And I think I found one. I found like literally one blog by a trans man. It's like the only one there was for years. So I think like this is something where language becomes really important, and I just had no language growing up for what I felt like. So I like couldn't identify it in any way except that I felt wrong. And I think like I never was super stereotypically masculine. So like, I remember when I first came out to someone and their response was like, so do you like football now? And I was like, well, no. I mean, I never liked football. I'm not going to start liking football just because I'm a guy now. But like, I think because of that, like, I didn't, it wasn't always immediately obvious to me. Like, well, I don't sort of express masculinity in these very stereotypical ways. So I don't think for my teenage self, I could just sort of go like, well, I'm very uncomfortable, but I kind of can't figure out why. So being a teenager was honestly really hard because of that. I was depressed a lot and kind of had no idea why or what to do about it. And it really wasn't until I got to college that other people were able to give me that language to understand who I was. And even then I think there were a few other trans folks at my college, but there was a queer scene, and there were just people who were able to help me kind of figure out who I was and what to do about it, as it were, like, just to kind of start that journey, like people who are very accepting. So I was able to start transitioning, and I basically transitioned physically sort of at the end of college, and right before grad school. So then basically when I went to grad school, I was passing as a regular guy. And for a long time, that's just kind of where I left it, because, really until very recently, like, there were very few people who were out as trans. It didn't feel like a particularly safe thing to be. It still doesn't in many places. So I basically was kind of stealth, as they say, for a long time. And I think that the 2016 election kind of tipped things for me, because I realized that trans issues were starting to take the spotlight. And there was starting to be a lot of backlash, a lot of ideas about whether or not we should be able to access healthcare. And I realized that, like, in music composition especially, it's a very, very cis, het, male-dominated space. And so I worked with all these people who just didn't know that they knew a trans person, basically. And I think there's a way that when these issues come up, people have this idea that they don't really need to care about it because it doesn't affect them or anyone they know. So I decided to be much more out at that point, and came out to my boss and stuff like that, because I just felt like, I want you to know that you do know a trans person and it does matter. And then once I wrote Always the Almost, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be out as a trans author, because I want those kids who are Googling to find, I mean, now there are so many people you can find, but I was just like, I want to be another person that you can find instead of that, like, one dude that I found Googling when I was younger.
So did you find comfort when you started coming out more publicly to other people, or was there backlash?
I basically had a really positive experience, which I think I was very lucky. I mean, when I first came out as trans, that was more complicated and that was trickier. And it was partly just that so few people even knew what that meant, that I think it was hard. I mean, it was hard for my family to really grasp what that meant. And it took some working through to kind of get to a point where everybody was okay. I think, like, when I came out later in 2016, two more of my acquaintances, or the folks that I worked with, that went pretty well. I mean, I basically approached it as, like, if you need to ask me questions, which is, like, not what I recommend doing the second you know a trans person. Be like, let me ask you all the questions, because some trans folks are like, I would really like to not be everyone's trans 101. But I just felt like, yeah, you know what? Ask me the questions. I'd rather you get this from me than from, like, whatever random Google search you're going to do in 5 minutes. And basically, like, we got some questions out of the way, and then we kind of moved on. And this is also Southern California. Like, I think, especially recently, it's been extremely different in different parts of the country. And I'm lucky that right now I live someplace where it is absolutely 100% easier to be trans here. And also, I look like a regular guy walking down the street, right? Like, I am a sort of short regular guy, and I probably read as pretty gay, but, like, that's a lot different than someone who doesn't necessarily pass as a cis person. And I'm sure that, that impacts my experience as well.
All right, that brings this episode to a close. Like last time, I will be providing the relevant episode titles and resources for the episodes you heard clips from today in the description. And of course, thank you for taking the time out of your day to hear some clips from some previous stories. Until next time, bye.